So before we get started, I want to talk about the mega city size soda you're drinking out of because this is insane. Like there's a scene in Parks and Rec where they're interrogating like the woman from Paunch Burger and the child size and it holds up this massive tub and they go, yeah, that's pretty much the size of a liquidized child. Where I mean, you're in America. I mean, why am I surprised?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
For those listening to this rather than watching, Chloe has just held this up to her. It's the size of a head. She could fit her head in it.
I probably could, but you know what? This was the small. Can you believe that?
You know what? You know what? I can believe it. Mega City One is here, Earthlets. This is in orbit every Wednesday.
Get 2000 AD now. Get 2000.
So, Borag Thung, Earthlets, and welcome to In Orbit every Wednesday, the weekly show from the 2000 AD Thrillcast. I am your host, Molch-R, and this is your other host, Chloe. And I realised that the intro to that is a little bit hypocritical because I've got this, which is I picked up at Rose City Comic Con, and this, you can fit a
That's
small
a
dog in
normal
this.
that's a normal size cup. I'm sorry.
It- just remembering how much larger than you I am.
Yeah. Mm. I think
Anyway.
I think you just need to adjust to buying things from America. Everything's a little bit bigger.
No comment. Even the fascism. Anyway, so
Oh,
welcome
yeah.
to in orbit every Wednesday, Earthlets. Thank you so much for all the feedback on the show so far. Deluges of quotes and comments and emails that we've been getting through. So thank you to everyone for just reacting so nicely
I love seeing
to
that
the show.
there's so many reactions every week. That's one of my favorite things to check in on now.
Yeah, well, so if you've not listened to last week's episode, we talked about the best horror in Judge Dredd. So thank you to Colin Parfit who emailed to say, loving the show, good work. For me, the most horrific strip was in a newspaper where a character had all of her facial features surgically removed and her husband had to communicate with her by tapping on her head. Now, I don't remember that.
I don't think I remember that either, but man, that sounds great.
But the reason I'm reading this out is he goes, I was about 8 and hadn't read the strip before and, and had no idea what happened to her. Now he doesn't know what strip it was, but that, if you know, please email in or comment on
Yeah,
YouTube.
please.
But that's exactly it. Is so much of the horror we were talking about was hitting you when you were 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and there's no context to it when you're a kid,
Yeah, no.
so it actually makes it more horrible and horrific. I remember reading Judge Anderson, The Possessed, which is
Oh, yeah.
it's fairly grim, but it's not necessarily horror. I was just fascinated by that, and I
How
must have been
old
what,
were you?
10, maybe.
Here, I have a it's not comics related, but let me
Mm.
tell you. So I saw Train Spotting when I was 10.
Oh,
And
this
part of
explains
it.
so much.
Okay, so but here I don't wanna get too off track, but I saw Train Spotting when I was 10 because I was allowed to rent it from the video store because, Ewan McGregor was on the cover and my grandmother was like, "Oh, that's the nice man who played Obi-Wan Kenobi." Of course you can get that. And then I just sat in front of my little TV set just watching this going, "Oh my god." And that shaped me into the person that I am today.
I mean, thank you for making me feel very old there. That you saw Train Spotting for the first time after the prequels came out. Wonderful. Thanks, mate.
Calm down, old man.
So we're talking about Prog 2320 and sorry, 2320, good God, 2420. And Magazine 477, which are both out this week. So make sure you go along to your Thrill Power provider and grab those, or go download the 2080 app and subscribe, and you get it delivered to your device every Wednesday. I mean, so much comics, far more than we can talk
Yeah.
about in this
We're gonna have to
episode.
hit on just a couple of points.
Yeah, I think somebody said, "Oh, I know. I want to hear what you think of all the strips," and I was like, "That'd be like a 4-hour show."
My brother in Christ, we're gonna have to need another hour for that.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants another hour of this. But thank you to those of you who enjoy half an hour of it every week. But I wanted to focus. I realised there was a kind of elephant in the room for the past few episodes, which is portals and black goo. We've referenced it offhandedly, but not kind of dived into it. And for those who haven't been reading it, it's basically kind of, how to describe it.
I'm not helping you because I wanna
Mm.
see how you describe this. Like
Um, so there's a thing called Devouroo, which is food delivery company for creatures. So it's vampires and
others,
werewolves and
yeah.
zombies and all sorts. You've got all of this, and by this point in the series, you're kind of uh, discovering just how ruthless the organization is, and uh, yeah. I'm doing a really considering I work in marketing, I'm doing a really bad job of explaining what this strip is. But uh, what's to me what's interesting about this series in particular, because like I say, the um, lead character Croy Plemons um, is yeah, discovering just how evil and awful Deliveroo is, and there's various other subplots going on. But I thought I'd touch on it because in this episode, things kind of get a bit nail
Yeah,
on,
it all
hitting the nail on the head kind of thing. As vis-a-vis a populist politician kind of whipping people up into attacking those who are different to them. Now, obviously, 2000 AD is the stories are commissioned months in advance, and then the artists spend a long time. So it's not surprising that this comes up. But one of the things that made me think was so much folk horror. Following our conversation last week about folk horror, so much folk horror can you had this big boom of it in the 1970s. And obviously you got Wicker Man and things like that. And that was a period when the far right was on the march.
Mhm.
Particularly in the mid to late 70s, they had a few electoral gains in the UK. So I wonder if there's a kind of deep seated connection between kind of British folk horror and politics.
Oh god, I don't even I think at this point in 2025, we are it's beyond British folk horror at this point. It's because it kind of is, the strip really is using the, um what's a good way to put it? The It's not even the horror of the supernatural, it's the horror behind the fear of not knowing, like, what something is, or and then, of course, using that and making it part of the everyday life where you've got, a giant corporation that is catering to this sort of thing, and there's nefarious things going on, so you've got, like, the general folk horror concept of fear of the unknown and translating that almost into a form of, like, racism or xenophobia, uh, and, I mean, it really is hitting the nail on the head, and even more concerning that it is being written, like, so much more in advance because it's like, "Oh, that's right, we are actually living in, like, a freakish dystopia." Fantastic.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Mhm.
So yes, that's it was just a thought that popped into my head while I was reading Portals and Black Goo. And we've touched on most of the other stuff, but that is a theme that seems to be recurring an awful lot in just in the kind of culture that well, the literature that I'm consuming at the moment, you know, whether I like it or not, it's that fear of the other, but not the necessarily the obvious fear of the other. But it's almost like the fear of the other,
Veiled. Yeah, there's like a
which
weird veil in between it,
mm,
that isn't actually a veil at all. It's, yeah, it's
yeah.
the want for there to be a veil because that's easier to try and explain to people than just being outright with
Yeah.
how, horrible things are.
Mm,
Um, but I mean, this strip is doing that really well.
mm,
So,
mm,
it's
absolutely.
it it's very, it's I I I mean this in a positive way, but it is very obvious,
Mm,
but in a way that's almost kind of validating to a lot of the stuff that's going on.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see that. I see that. But I mean, that kind of 1970s stuff leads me up nicely on to talking about what's in the magazine.
Yeah,
Again, we could spend an hour talking about in total. So
I
we'll
know what
pick
you're
one.
about to mention.
I'll pick one highlight from Meg 477, which is Fargo and McBain, which
Yes,
is Ken Nyman and Anna Redman. Now, I am a massive fan of Anna's work,
yes.
and there's something about this strip that is just it's nailing that 1970s kind of dirtbag aesthetic. You know, that kind of
Mhm,
exploitation of style of filmmaking, of images of New York at the time, which were so prevalent, as a basically the collapse of Western society. Um, and within this, you've got um, Eartha Fargo, who,
mhm.
you know, is ostensibly Dredd's grandmother,
Yeah.
and you've got Jack McBain, who you know, if you know your Judge Dredd history, One Eyed Jack was the character that John Wagner did before he created Judge Dredd. So, in of itself, the strip is a wonderful kind of connection of all these things, and then you've got the storytelling in this series, which is so absolutely spot on. Like, and I mean, you've got a particular favorite page, haven't you?
I do, because there's, I mean, Ken Nyman being, we all bow down, and because the actual literal storytelling is actually fabulous. It's great. It's a very grizzled sort of story that mashes
Mm.
up these characters really beautifully. But there's one page in particular that Anna does where uh, Fargo is kind of being used as the honeypot. Um, a nice little term, kind of used to say that she is going to use her feminine wiles and sexuality to seduce this guy that they're catching, right? And there's one page where she is going about doing that. There is not a single line of dialogue on that page, and you can see it, you can hear it, you can like tell everything that's going on from start to finish, and it's beautiful. Like, I don't know, I love a good script, obviously, but if there is an artist that can tell a good portion of a story just based off of images and nothing else, that's good comics. Like
It is, and I love her portrayal of Fargo, because Anna does such a good job of making her beautiful, you know,
Yeah.
making her somebody who could do a honey trap, but at the same time isn't diminished or
Mhm.
condescended because of you know, her looks. She has a look about her which means she can handle herself. You know,
Yes.
she's somebody who's experienced the world, which is a really difficult line to walk
Yeah.
in that kind of strip. So it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm fully on board with Fargo and McBain. Um, Speaking of female characters who have something about them. You are quite taken with something else in this, Meg, aren't you?
Yeah, Nick Dyer has a gorgeous Venus Blue Jeans pinup. And if anybody, like, listened to, our episode a couple of weeks back about, like, hottest characters of 2000 AD, Venus Blue Jeans is definitely up there for me. So I'm, like, sitting there flipping through all the pages, and I see that, and I was like, "Ah, and we shall marry in the springtime." Like, this is that made me so happy to see because it felt like it just came out of nowhere, and that was a lovely little present for me personally, so thanks, Nick.
Well, I mean, hopefully, in the future, we're going to have some news about the Road Trooper movie, which is still in production. So fingers crossed on that. But also, there is a. Oh, why does my brain go blank as soon as I try to think of things?
Because
It's
you're just that good.
oh
Because it's
well,
full
yeah,
of smarts.
it's so smart.
'Cause
Um,
it's not shut up, it's not full enough of it doesn't have enough soda in it, that's
um, I'm now at a time of life where if I have like caffeine beyond 12, I'm no use to anyone. But there's a Road Trooper signing because the Complete Collection Book One is out in April. Jerry Finley Day and Dave Gibbons are going to be signing at Gosh on Saturday, the 12th of April at 1 to 2 p.m. So that's Gosh in London. Yeah, go along to that. Absolutely banging signing, to be quite frank.
Oh,
Um,
seriously. I wish
yeah.
I wasn't thousands of miles away. This is the problem.
Just consume another couple of those tubs of soda and you'll be able to fly here on your own.
Ah, yes. I might need a couple, but I think we can make that happen for real.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Um, yeah.
There was one more strip that I wanna mention from the Meg before we kind of make our little conversational transfer. So, Devlin Waugh, anybody who knows, my love of 2000 AD history knows that I'm a massive Devlin Waugh fan, and I particularly love Alish Kott's, way of writing him. I think, again, it feels very nail on the head, in a way that like John Smith did not do, but that I love. And this one in particular, I'll just go out and say it, and I feel like I say this every time I talk about Devlin. This strip in particular this week was just real gay. It was real gay, and I was telling, you before we started recording, I was like, "There's boy kissing!" Like, and that just kinda like, it's just a really good strip, and I think Alice is really, really good at treading the line between making Devlin a character that, does have a little bit more to him than one would expect, and mixing that with the supernatural and with kind of like an unapologetic, like, sexuality.
Hmm.
And
It,
it's
it's
all
it,
good.
it is nice. I mean, you see lots of opinions about how Devlin Waugh, and not intended in any way, shape, or form to diminish or criticize the way that John, as the co-creator,
Yeah.
wrote the character, but the so often the sexuality was pure camp.
Yeah.
And that was part of his appeal. He's Terry Thomas. It's that kind of mustache
Yeah.
curling, gap-toothed, kind of repressed camp
The
of the
only way
crowd.
that British people could deal with gay culture to a
Yeah,
certain extent.
and particularly British gay culture as well, which so
Yes.
much of it has in the past has had to be based around things like camp and drag and comedy and everything. Um, but I think Alice has moved the character on into a space where it has tackled um, his sexuality, and
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult to. I almost feel like calling him a gay character is almost undercooking his sexuality. he's
Yes.
he's queer,
So much
and
more
in
than
the
that.
yeah the most expansive sense of the word.
Yes.
Um, and I mean that for me asks questions of um the presentation, because he is Dredd, he's set in the
Yeah.
world of Dredd. He is a Dredd world character, and has encountered Dredd several occasions. Um, and so he's in that respect, he's almost like the anti-Dredd.
Yeah, and in a weird lateral sort of way. I feel like like, I both agree with you, and I also am like, like, there's definitely an interesting parallel there where it's,
Mm.
not quite hedonism, but, where Dredd is such a character that is so strict and by the guidelines. Devlin is very much,
Well, he's a libertine.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
This is why you're useful, Mike. You come up with good
Yeah.
words.
I can't remember when the signing is in the next few weeks, but I
You
can I can think of words like that.
you can talk real good.
Hard disagree. But yeah, it's I mean the kind of uh, it's always been one of the interesting things about Dread is how uh, little sexuality, not even just in terms of Dredd himself, but within the wider strip has been presented. I mean, it was an interesting. I think the one time one review of my book that made me sit up and go, "Oh, actually, no, you're entirely right." Was a law lecturer called Zoe Tong from Leeds,
Mhm,
and she pointed out there was nothing in there about um, sexual violence,
mhm.
and the way the police deal with it or don't deal with it, and are so often involved in it and things like that. And so you're exactly right. The problem is the strip doesn't deal with that stuff.
Well, part of that is part of that is obviously, intentional because, like,
Mm,
Wagner has said he's actually said, like, "I can't like, I'm not gonna tackle sexuality with Dredd, like, I don't think it needs to be there, like, it's not even a consideration."
mm.
And so from a very, like, direct from, co-creator standpoint, like, sure, sexuality is not something that's going to be addressed head on when it comes to Dredd, but in the Dredd world, I think it's kind of a bizarre. Everything's a bizarre dystopian thing in the Dredd world, but, um, with there's a couple of strips, even one just I think it was the start of The Shift even, where, there's domestic abuse, and so if somebody retaliates or something like that, it's like, "Well, then you shouldn't have done that, you should have called it in," and that's so reminiscent of, you know, a lot of things that happen in real life to a lot of people. Um, but yeah, Dredd, like, any sexuality in the Dredd strip is really kinda unique.
Well,
Um
in terms of him as a character, it very much that notion of which the strip has either played with, played up, or ignored. Is the
Mhm.
notion of the judges as basically a monastic order of like warrior monks, who are not corrupted by the everyday world, and certainly sexuality um, is presented as a corruption.
Sure.
Yeah.
But there obviously is, like, even with other judges, there are
Mm.
obviously, like, signs of there being some sort of sexuality, even if you are a judge. Judge Giant had a kid while he was in service.
Yeah.
There's thing or what was it? The whole storyline with DeMarco. Like, all of these things that, like, it clearly can exist within the realm of the judges. It's just that Dredd specifically is so like, he's obviously meant to be the most dedicated out of all of them. Um, but it kind of there's, if anybody who hasn't read it should look it up. There is a fabulous article written by, a lovely, wonderful writer named Tom Shapira, who has written pretty extensively about asexuality and aromanticism in Dredd as a character, and it tracks really hard, but I still think that that doesn't mean that these things don't exist in that world. It's just that they're never it's kind of a they're all fade to black moments. In the movies or something, if there's something kind of sexy going on, it fades to black. And you do kind of get little blips and blops of that throughout Dread, I feel. Because I mean, how's Giant having a kid without
Well, but this thing, it happens, but from, Dredd's point of view, it's weakness.
Yes.
The blot on Giant's reputation as a judge is that he had a kid. It's not,
Yeah.
you know, yes, and yes, his kid became this wonderful
Mhm.
judge in of himself. Um, and you see that also in something like America, which is
Yeah.
a very difficult story
Yeah.
to read now, but nonetheless, I think has quite profound things to say about love and sex in a totalitarian state.
Yeah.
And this is probably why Dread is such a renunciation of emotion and passion and sex and
Yeah.
intimacy and love, is that um, these things are freedom.
Oh, I mean, it's the
Mhm.
ultimate freedom. It's the
Yeah,
ultimate autonomy that you can you in so many ways you can try to take away from people, but it is the nature of things.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
And
whether
that's
that is sex or love, like, it's not, like, on an emotional level or a physical level, like,
Mm.
life finds a way, you know?
Well, totalitarian systems do everything they can to control those moments because they recognize them as symbols of freedom, of individual freedom. So, you see it in 1984,
Yeah.
Handmaid's Tale, Handmaid's Tale. Thank you. Um, even stuff like uh, what's it? P.D. James's. Oh, it's Children of Men. Um,
Children of
yeah,
Men's a great one.
the novel that Children of Men was based, the film was based on, where it systems will try and control that aspect of human behavior because they recognize it as something that actually they can't really control.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the really, really obvious examples of where this has been quite stark was Closet, which was the one part story that Rob Williams and Mike Dowling did for Judge Dredd a number of years ago, which caused international
Big hubbub.
um yeah partly my fault, but it was my
Oh,
job.
just a little bit.
Yeah. But the one of the things that was actually quite shocking about it was a writer going, well, actually, are there gay people in Megacity One, and how does the
Yeah.
state react to them, and what do they do? And you pointed out when we were talking about this that in a system of dominance, of control, human sexuality will react to that in a certain
Well
way.
Well, especially, yeah, in a world where there's a lot of oppression, and especially if you're not being we can kind of assume that sexuality is not something taught within the Judge Dredd world, within Mega City One. You're not having probably healthy chats about sexuality and things like that. Um, and like for me, like Dredd may be asexual, aromantic, but there's so many instances in the strips of people being attracted to Dread, and for me, it's I kind of understand it, but I read it more of, sorry to make anybody uncomfortable if this does that, but I kind of read it more from, like, a BDSM standpoint, where there is a power dynamic, a power play at hand, where, in roles of, like, dominance and submission, you do have, like, these stoic, this brand of stoicism, of denial, of ignoring people, that is attractive to people who enjoy the I don't want to say safety, like safety of oppression, but the understood role of being oppressed.
Mm.
Um, and knowing that there is a figure that is more powerful, that has control over that, can be like catnip to some people. And so, like, I read a lot of those stories where someone is attracted to dread and can't seem to get over it, like, as other people not knowing what to do with those feelings of sexuality, and it turns into this, like, weird power dynamic. And that's kinda cool. That's kind like, that's a fun way of translating. But then even, like, even closet, what you're talking about, where, this where is Judge Dredd gay? It's like, no, but there sure is a club where there are, like, gay men dressed up like judges, and that just screams queer leather culture to me, just at the top of its lungs. It just screams queer leather culture, because what better way to fight against the suppression of who you are than to dress and act as the thing oppressing you and use it as something for pleasure? Why would
And,
you not?
well, and there's that kind of the kind of hetero aspect of that does crop up as well. When you think about Inga, who was PJ Maybe's
Yeah.
bot, dressing first of all, dressing up as Chief Judge Hershey in order for sex games, and then being used in exactly that role to try and carry out an assassination. So it's all there. It's just so much of it it is, as you say, fade to black. Screen goes a bit
Yeah,
blurry,
yeah.
but it's there's a bit of titillation there, but a lot going on. We've run out of time again.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah. I'm just that's I we could prattle on about all of this stuff. Also, I can't wait until we pick a day to talk about PJ Maybe. Man, what a joyride that's gonna be.
It's much missed PJ Maybe.
Yes.
But what a way to bow out. But yes, thank you, Earthlets. We got into the weeds on that very, very quickly. So do let us know what's the sexiest moment in Judge Dredd. There we go.
Oh,
Oh, I know. What pushes your buttons?
oh,
We're
ooh.
gonna get some funny comments. Some funny comments.
Y'all are gonna be telling on yourselves this week.
But yes, we should be back in 7 days' time for the next episode of In Orbit every Wednesday. Don't forget that the magazine 477 and Prog 2420 are out this week. Download the 2000 AD app and they get sent to your tablet or your phone every week, dead easy. Or subscribe and get it delivered to your door. In the meantime, I've been Molch-R. This has been KLO-E. I'm not going to ask you to do final words this week because yet again, even though I
No,
warned you I was going to do it last time.
nobody says it like that. Nobody says it like that. This is one of those this is one of those weird British things that has never gotten back to me, and so I just sit there like a deer in the headlights. So, for me, it's bye. Bye, y'all.
Get 2000 AD now. Get.
Well, thanks for joining us on In Orbit every Wednesday, Earthlets. Make sure you like and subscribe and go along to 2000 AD, where you'll be able to subscribe to 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd Megazine. Sign up to our newsletter and you'll get hundreds of pages of free comics to download. And download the app for your Apple and Android devices. Now, don't forget, Earthlets, this is the 2000 AD universe. We just live in it.